What's up, fellas? Welcome to a brand new episode of The Sports Student. My name's Wendell Epps, aka The Sports Student, and in today's podcast, I'll be interviewing Olivia Eisenhauer. So Olivia is currently a student at Arizona State University studying sports journalism. She wants to get into the sports media industry professionally after college, and she has already done some incredible things in the sports media industry at such a young age. So talented. She's worked as a sideline reporter for Pac-12 Sports, and she also recently created her own podcast that is about a very cool topic that she'll be discussing in today's episode. This is a sports student interview with Olivia Eisenhauer.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I am delighted to be joined by Olivia Eisenhauer. And Olivia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So can you just go ahead and quickly give everyone just kind of a background of what you do, where you are right now? I know you're currently in college and you've already done some amazing things. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so I am an incoming sophomore at Arizona State University at the Cronkite School, which has been my dream school since about sixth grade, since I decided I wanted to do sports broadcasting. Sitting behind Dick Vitale at a Kansas basketball tournament, actually. And that's my hometown. I live about 20 minutes outside of Kansas City, on the Kansas side. But I'm a sports journalism major right now, and then I'll graduate within 4 years with my master's degree.
Very cool. Very cool. So, I mean, I know as a college student, it's already tough enough, like just being in college, having to go to class and all that stuff. I mean, I'm in college right now too, and I kind of do similar things to what you're doing with the whole sports journalism aspect. So like, how is that, like balancing schoolwork, but then also doing sports media work as a college student?
You know, with my podcast hosts or my podcast guests, I've always heard this because I've asked the same question. How do you really balance everything, especially moving forward when you have a family or spouse or whatever it is? I don't like, and I've always been this way. If you ask my family, if you ask anyone around me, I have a goal in mind and it's just kind of hit the gas and I don't hit the brakes very often. And that might be kind of a flaw, but at the same time, I think it's perfect for what I'm going into. So you get your schoolwork done. But the weird thing about sports broadcasting is, and my parents, like my dad's a lawyer and my mom has 2 master's degrees as well. So they don't really understand this, but it's more what you're doing outside of class, and then you get your schoolwork done when you're done with that, which sounds very backwards, but quite frankly, the employers want to see you're real and what you're doing. Where I remember there was days I'd come home from ASU baseball games at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd be done editing, and then I'd get my schoolwork done really quickly. Like it's a mess and it's fun. And I wouldn't change it for the world, quite frankly.
No, I hear that. I mean, like, that's the thing about like studying, like what we're both studying right now in college is like, it's so unique. It's not like a business or math major where, you know, you're getting like all these projects and like essays and like tests and stuff. Like what we do, you know, like for sports media, you just got to go out there, like go out in the real world and get experience. So that's like really important for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like compared to other majors, it's a lot more competitive.
Oh, for sure.
This exact moment where I have a lot of friends that they're like, I really have to hit the books because I have to apply for nursing school in the future. Where this major, you kind of got to start hitting the gas from day one, or you're going to feel behind, or you're going to kind of be behind. At least in my mind, that's how it was. And that's one of my biggest flaws in this industry, I think, is I'm always comparing myself to others, and I need to make sure I'm focusing on what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I totally hear that because like there's many times, you know, we look up to people in the industry, but then there's also some people that, you know, we're like, okay, are they going to get started at the same time, you know, we're starting? Because like in college, it's just like a whole big competition with sports media and all that stuff. But I mean, obviously you understood the importance of like right after entering college, like getting right in the door. So like how cool is that to you that the stuff you've been able to do right now and you're still in your early stages of your college career?
Oh my gosh. So like I mentioned, ASU is my dream school since about sixth grade. The college football playoff committee member, Paula Bovin, she's the only woman on the committee. She's one of the sports bureau directors at ASU. Just the amount of opportunities I've had, I couldn't find very many other places. And I get all the time being from Kansas City, like why didn't you go to Mizzou? And I was like, well, one, my dad's a KU grad. I grew up a huge Kansas fan, so that was kind of off the table. But at the same time, like you don't get the experiences as soon as I did. Like I was given the experience to sideline for Pac-12 Plus this year. That doesn't happen.
That's
And at
amazing.
the end of the day, it's like whatever you take advantage of, and most of the time it's kind of one door closes, another opens. But in this industry, you kind of got to kick doors down on your own and find your way.
No, for sure. You got to do that because like it just helps so much. And then you always hear like you got to develop those connections and it's all about, who you know and all that stuff, which is like honestly, like it's very true. It's very true. So, I mean, you said you did sideline reporting for Pac-12, which is absolutely amazing. So, how was that experience, especially like this past year? Because obviously the whole world of college athletics was looking completely different due to the pandemic. So, how was that kind of getting experience, getting your foot in the door in the middle of what we're going through right now?
When a lot of people say like, I'm so sorry this was your experience your first year of college, but like one, I think it helped me focus on my career more, which is very important, like I kind of touched on. But also a lot of my classes were in person. You can't really teach the broadcast classes not in person. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
difficult. It's all very hands-on. At first I was like, oh cool, I'm like one of the only students that actually gets to attend these sporting events. But like there's a sense of adrenaline when you walk into an arena, when you walk into each time I'd walk into Phoenix Municipal Stadium for baseball, like I'd get these goosebumps. It's just like, okay, I'm here. Like, and it's so awesome. I never get sick of the feeling. And it's like, there's people watching this broadcast and want to know what I have to say. And that at the end of the day is so important because you're the filter. And especially if you want to be a sideline reporter, from what I've been told, you're going to hear everything. You're going to know almost everything, but you have to make sure what is coming out on the other end of the mic isn't everything, but what the viewers need to know and what they can know to an
No,
extent.
for sure. That's well said there. Well said. I mean, I couldn't have said that any better. I mean, that's definitely very important. Yeah, I feel like this year kind of just like it helped us focus because we had a lot more time than we probably had like in years past. And I mean, yeah, you mentioned like the sports media classes, taking those online, like that just can't happen. You got to be in person because it's just so interactive and all that. And just speaking of like interactive stuff, like I know you have your own podcast that you do. So can you like talk about a little bit about what your podcast is about and kind of like what made you want to start it?
Yeah, so I've always, especially this year, I was just trying to find ways that how can I set myself apart from everyone I'm going to school with, where I'm going to graduate from this crazy, amazing journalism school, and people are going to be like, okay, I need to know her. Like, I want to know who that is. I want to get her contact, her reel. How can I offer her a job? Versus, I love my classmates, but versus the other people that are going to be graduating with
Yeah,
me.
no, I hear you.
Very, very intense to an extent. But I had listened to a few podcasts and they had been more self-help motivation kind of things. And I was like, you know what, let me start my own, and kind of a way to make connections at the same time. But I've met a ton of really cool people. I've had Paula Bovin on the college football playoff committee. I've had a couple ESPN reporters, Laura Rutledge, Chris Budden, like some amazing names. And just the idea behind the podcast is women in sports, which I think gets a lot more attention now, but it's not easy. And I don't want to play the all like boo-hoo, like feel bad for me kind of card, but it's just, I know what I'm getting into. And the more I really appreciate these women I have as guests because they're paving the way. So it's easier for people like me where they don't have it so easy and they didn't starting in their career. And I just ask about what's it like having kids? What's it like getting married? How do you navigate everything? Because there's so many questions that I feel like women can't even say in media to an extent, because then they get bashed for like, no one really cares about that. But like in reality, that's concerns in my mind.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just kind of the idea of helping those coming after them like me. And I just love having them on. It's great to have a conversation really heart to heart with them.
No, I mean, you bring up a really, really important point there, Olivia. I mean, like women in sports media, like that's something that's, becoming more of a talked about topic. And like, it's true. Like sometimes you forget, like, they're human too. Like they got stuff going on, you know, they're not just broadcasters, but they also have a personal life. So like, there's a lot that kind of goes on to it. So like, just being able to like have those people to look up to, like you said, I mean, that's like definitely just a huge bonus.
It's definitely, and I've always been like, I grew up playing several different sports. So I've always been incredibly competitive. My parents kind of joke on the son they never had. Like I go to all the sheep games with my dad, just everything like that. But to an extent, I forgot where my train of thought was going there. I'm so sorry.
You're totally good. Totally good.
But yeah, it's just kind of how I think, how can I help those behind me, but also how can I better myself at the same time? And it's really hard with especially sideline reporter roles because there's only so many openings, I guess. And a lot of women in the industry, they get the reputation, even if it's not true, oh, you just don't know anything. You're kind of spoon fed the information. But in reality, they're doing the research. I think Chris Bun's a great example of it. The College World Series coverage she did was absolutely amazing. Like
Yes.
incredible. All these stories. And I'm like, Chris, how do you find this stuff? Like, this is insane. But just respecting women in sports moving forward is huge to me, knowing that they actually understand sports, not the typical comeback of, oh, name 3 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Oh.
I was literally asked if I knew the position of Patrick Mahomes the other day from a guy. And I was like, but
Wow.
I'm from Kansas City and I don't live under a rock. Like, I'm not dumb.
Exactly. And like, I'm almost positive you probably know more about the Chiefs than he does. So it's like,
It's a lot of times it's just, you kind of have to brush it off because at the end of the day,
yeah.
it's some unemployed, no offense, but like some unemployed, like 6-year-old that has nothing better to do or wishes they were in your position or something like that. And you just kind of be like, okay, whatever, man. Like, just go find something else to do.
No, for sure, for sure. It's honestly like sometimes I think like being in the sports media industry, it's almost like being an athlete too, because like, you know, you're gonna get praise, you're gonna get credit from people, but then you're also gonna have like, you know, some haters, some doubters that may say, hey, maybe this is not for you. They're gonna try and like put you down, but like you said, you gotta brush that off, like forget about it, like forget about those people.
Right. And you have to really, I think as a student and as you're growing and kind of building your skill, like the situation we're both in, you have to find that one person that's always going to tell you the complete truth, but the truth that you need to hear, not, oh, your
Yes.
lipstick was smudged a little bit. Like, this is what you need to be doing better. I think that's what ASU professors have done incredibly well, is you need to pronunciate. I'm a huge hand talker. My hands, I mean, they're huge. Like, so they're very distracting. Like, just little things like you need to stop pacing. You need to stop talking with your hands as much and stuff like that. Like, my dad's that for me. He watches every single thing I do, likes everything I do, love him to pieces. But he just goes, this is what you need to be working on. And I know I can respect his opinion.
That's awesome. So can you talk about like how your family has like really like kind of impacted and really supported your dream? Because I know for me, like my family, they're definitely my biggest supporters, and just like knowing that they're there, like I can count on them to watch the games that I announce, you know, even if it's just them, like I don't care. At least I know I got somebody supporting me. So just how is that with your family, the kind of close relationship you've been able to develop with them over the years?
Yeah, so I would say, I don't get me wrong, love my mom, love my sister, dogs, if you want to throw that in. But my dad has been my best friend, I think, since day one. If you look at all the baby pictures of me, I'm in some kind of Kansas basketball shirt or Kansas basketball cheerleading outfit. I'm at a Royals game or something like that. I would always, my dad had season tickets to Kansas basketball since I was, before I was born. So that's kind of where the whole sports thing started. And there's all these old pictures of me and like this, I used to wear this cheesy Kansas hat that was a giant Jayhawk head. And bless my dad's heart, but he kind of stuck with it. And then the Chiefs got good after the Royals got good, and that kind of built on it. But I sat behind Dick Vitale, like I kind of mentioned, at a Kansas basketball tournament in Orlando. And we happened to be sitting right behind the announcers, totally unplanned. And I'm just on national television going, like mouth wide open. And my dad was like, kind of kicked me and he was like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm like, that's so cool that he can do that. My dad's like, you totally can do that. And so ever since then, that's been my dream. But I grew up playing competitive volleyball mainly. You can't tell from the Zoom box, but I'm 6 foot tall. That was my main sport, watching sports. I had some pretty severe health issues in my high school years that took me out of sports in general. And that's really when I started going to the Chiefs games and watching Chiefs games and like, okay, that's how Eric Bieniemy, that's how he put that play together. And that's so cool how he can be that creative. But like you said, my family's my backbone. Like it's always family, school, family, faith, school for me. But just it's not easy to have a kid go, you know what, I really want to go into a field that's quite frankly shrinking. Like there's not very many opportunities coming out of it.
Mhm.
And ever since I said, like before 6th grade, my dad has been like, so this is, you need to know what you're getting into, but totally go for it because you totally got this. And I question all the time because like I said, my dad's a lawyer. My mom has 2 master's degrees. She's a psychologist, works with the FBI. Like they're very different fields. And I'm like, Mom, it's just so hard for me to fathom them being okay and totally supporting me. I get emotional kind of talking about it. Going into a field that's quite frankly such an unknown, and there's not necessarily a clear-cut path. You don't know if you're going to make a lot of money for a really long time. And just going, you know what, go for that because it's not a secure field, but you're so good. Like you're going to be fine. And I will never ever, ever take them for granted because I don't even know where I'd be without them, quite frankly, and the health stuff I went through, especially with that.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I mean, that's remarkable. Like that whole little story there. I mean, but yeah, that's what family's for. They're there to protect you. They're there to support you, and just lift you up. And I mean, that's just the beauty of life, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah. Sorry,
um,
I'm not
you're,
used to being on the receiving end of an interview.
you're, you're totally good. I love that. That was such an authentic answer.
But yeah, I mean, I remember ever since I was a little kid, my grandma, she would cut out of the Kansas City Star newspaper, she'd cut out the sports section, save them up until each time she saw me. And I still have some of them saved, I think. But just I couldn't even imagine where I'd be without my family. It's incredible to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm gonna take you back a little bit in the past right now. So let me just transition back to your first game that you worked. What was the first game you worked? What was like it? Do you remember the day before? Anything around those lines?
So I did my first studio show before my first game.
Okay.
And to put things in perspective, my first studio show, my director and the professor of the class is Lynn Dawson's nephew. And
Wow.
so I'm one of the only girls in the class. I walk in, he goes, "You're anchoring today." And I was like, okay. And it was like just a live studio production class. So you kind of tested out everything.
Yeah.
This was the second class. I was scared to pieces, my heart racing, all this stuff. And then he pulls up, I think the sport I had to talk about was drag racing and then hockey, which I don't know hockey very well. My roommate loves hockey, so she's teaching me. But
it can only do so much.
And of course, it's all these names that I'm just like, really? This is difficult. But I think that show was just sheer panic. My first time sidelining was Pac-12 plus volleyball, which I think there was a sense of security with knowing I know volleyball. I grew up playing volleyball. I knew the skill. I have some memory issues, so I was just running through over and over again in my head, like, what was I going to say here? What was I going to say here? And it's pre-taped. So bless the producer's heart. I had to tape it like 3 times. But I remember Mark walking over. He's Lynn Dawson's nephew. He's taught that same class and he runs all the Pac-12 plus live streams. And he came over and he goes, "You don't need to fit every single story into your opening shot." And that made so much more sense. And just after that first initial opening shot, I feel like I've been so at peace at sideline because yeah, it's adrenaline, but I've learned how to take that adrenaline, not to a place of panic and stressing out, but to this is the energy I'm going to put it straight into the broadcast. And that, yeah, I think I've gotten a lot better since then. I hope I've gotten a lot better since then. But yeah, just the night before, oh my gosh, my roommate, I probably annoyed the crap out of her. I was just walking around in circles, like saying the opening lines over and over and over again. I think I laid out my outfit at least 5 times. Yeah, that that was interesting, but chugged a lot of coffee that morning and it turned out okay.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say you did all that stuff because like I'll tell my friends about like my experience calling my first game and like just like rehearsing and they're like, man, you did not do that. Like you did not spend 5 hours rehearsing, your opening, but like it's a true thing in sports media. Like you gotta rehearse, just like if you're, an actor, actress, like you just gotta rehearse. So
even with teleprompters, you still need
yeah,
to like
exactly.
have to practice breathing and all this stuff.
Yeah. And then like pace is key too. And you don't want to sound like a robot. You want to sound energetic. You want to sound like you want to be there. Sometimes you feel like you're sounding enthusiastic, but then your face is like, it just has like that boring look to it, So yeah, there's definitely a lot to it. But kind of like growing up, like I know you said like Chiefs fan, Kansas fan, like just how was that, like being a big sports fan, being around that, how did that sort of like inspire you? Just obviously Kansas, there's some great teams. So just how did that really inspire you to really become a big sports fan and really into this whole sports media thing?
Well, I remember, how old was I? I was pretty young when I first got my Instagram. I would get into arguments with probably these like really old guys on SportsCenter or Instagram. Like just in the comments section, I'd be throwing out names like Danny Manning and stuff like this. And of course, at that time, it was really what my dad was saying. And I was just kind of spitting it out the other side. Like, I totally know what I'm talking about. Now I do. But then I did not. But yeah, it's Kansas basketball. That's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. Not just because I happen to be at that tournament sitting behind Dick Vitale, but just if you ever get a chance to go to Allen Fieldhouse, Kansas fan or not, go. I've gone to a lot of games. My dad's been a season ticket holder since I was born. I get during warm-ups, during the intros, during everything, I still get chills. There's nothing like Allen Fieldhouse. AFC Championship game at Arrowhead, pretty close, but there's very few places like Allen Fieldhouse. And just that's where initially I started really understanding play call, and not for football and not other sports, obviously, but this is why Coach Self is doing that. This is the motivation behind that. Why is he like, even back to like, why is he fouling if there's 0.2 seconds left? Like I used to think that was the dumbest thing ever. My dad's like, this is why they're doing. Oh, okay. Like just sitting there asking questions. That's why I'm going into what I am. And then the Royals got good, and then the Chiefs got good.
That's awesome. Yeah, Kansas City, it's definitely on the come up. I got to ask you, do you think, I know the NBA has been talking about expanding maybe 2 teams to the league. Do you think Kansas City is a realistic possibility for that?
Yeah, and I think 5-7 years, 10 max, I think Kansas City is the place to be. It's the biggest argument I'd say is it's a college basketball state. If you think Kansas, I would say for the most part, especially sports fans, they're thinking basketball, or they're a Duke fan just kind of trying to brush it off. But it's definitely not Kansas football. I'm going to tell you that much. Sat through a lot of painful minutes of that. But I think it would be ideal. I think the city, there's a pride in being a Kansas Cityan now that there didn't used to be. And even I would argue after the World Series, that's kind of when it started. But after the World Series, there was still kind of a, woo, Kansas City. Like it wasn't a big thing. And then Patrick Mahomes finally got his start. And now I can proudly, like, I don't say I'm from Kansas because then people are like, oh, where's your Toto and overalls and all that crap. But I say I'm from Kansas City, and it ultimately, it's like, especially in my major, it's like, oh, Tom Brady's the GOAT. And I'm like, okay, well, that's debatable. Okay. But it's stuff like that. There's a pride in being a Kansas City, and now that I think there didn't used to be. And I think there's a platform here now. It's not a big city, but it's getting there.
No, for sure. And I mean, I hate to bring this up, but with Mahomes and the Chiefs last year, how did last season kind of make you feel? But like, do you have optimism though heading into this next season?
Yeah. Last season, I think the Super Bowl, well, I literally drove home for the Super Bowl because my dad typically has a work conference, and so I could watch it with him. That game, I watched half of it. The rest of it, I was laying in my room on my bed, face down, screaming. I get a little into it, just a little,
just a little bit.
But yeah, I think the Super Bowl was what was going to happen eventually. The Chiefs didn't have an O-line, and no matter how amazing Patrick Mahomes is, like, I mean, the man literally made a throw horizontal. Like, that is probably my favorite image almost ever, because it's a team that didn't have an offensive line. He didn't have protection, and somehow this guy managed to throw something sideways when, like, I can barely, like, skip a rock on the lake sideways. Like, it's insane to me. But I think the defense finally has the fire behind them. There has been a lot of names go, but quite frankly, I think that's just on the offensive side. That's for the better in terms of receivers and that kind of thing. I don't think there's a shortage of receivers. That's not the Chiefs' issue whatsoever.
Not at all.
And I think Patrick Mahomes could throw to, well, my mom, who's never watched more than 5 minutes of football in her life. Love her to pieces, but that is not her forte. I think with Orlando Brown, when someone like him tweets this line is going to be good or something like that, like, you better watch out, I think that's when you should watch out.
Oh,
So
definitely.
I think, and the next Super Bowl is actually in Glendale or Phoenix, one of the two. But I think the back-to-back is a possibility this year and the following season, as long as Honey Badger stays around.
No, I definitely agree with that, because, like, most times in NFL, it's unpredictable. It's rare for teams to, like, consecutively be Super Bowl contenders for many years. But the Chiefs, it's like they definitely got, like, a little dynasty going on. And Mahomes is young. They just got a lot of talent on that team overall.
Yeah, and I mean, you hear stories. I hear them on the local news all the time. Patrick Mahomes loves Kansas City. He wants to be here. His wife is a partial owner of the new women's soccer team here. He's a partial owner of the Royals. Like, he wants to be here, and you hear stories all the time about him and Brittany going out to eat or something on the plaza or downtown, and no one really bugs him because adults understand it's not a moment to fangirl or fanboy over the star quarterback in the city, but just let them have their time. And he'll turn around and go, all your texts are covered. Thanks for letting us have time alone. Like, he loves being here. And I love Patrick Mahomes so much. And I remember, I may have had the evidence to back this, may have not. But I remember Alex Smith, the first year he was drafted at the end of the season, I'm like, Dad, they need to start Patrick Mahomes. And he was like, no, they don't. And I'm like, he's a lot more accurate. And I'm like, see, Dad, I called this a long time ago. But I feel good. I feel really good about it. I think he'll ultimately, fairly win more rings than Tom Brady. But that's a whole nother story. I could go on another soapbox about that. So, like, I don't know. Just keep your options open in this industry, and you never know where life is going to take you. I think that's a very general life motto, but just take what you can in the moment. And that just,
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's good to have a good baseball team, and football, it doesn't hurt to be able to go, yep, I'm an Arizona State fan. I don't know who Kansas is. Sorry, Dad. I don't know who Kansas football is.
No, definitely. And I mean, I know you have experience, like, covering a variety of sports, and just, like, how much has that helped you? Like, how important has that been to not just, focus on that one sport you love growing up, but also just, like, expanding your branch, expanding your knowledge, and being able to really know every single sport, know how to cover it in full detail?
Yeah, and I need to get better. Like baseball, I feel like I know baseball, football, most of basketball. I feel like I know the terminology. I know everything, or mostly everything, down to the nitty gritty. But outside of that, I grew up playing almost every sport. When I was really little, I was playing everything. I had, like I said, I had cardiac issues taking me out of volleyball. And that's really where I think I developed my understanding of so many sports, because I couldn't play them, but I understood the X's and O's of them a lot better, and understood the decision making and that kind of thing. And so I think that helped a lot. And that's really important moving forward, because do I know hockey? No. But what if I graduate and the only thing available is a hockey position? Like, fake it till you make it, kind of, but like, you can't really do that with a lot of sports. So it sounds really stupid, but I have a lot of sports for dummies books, because those books take it down to every single detail you need to know.
That is a
Every
fact.
single detail.
That is a fact.
So
I think I have a couple of them myself, and they actually help. Like, there's really nothing wrong with that. I mean, any practice, any research you can just study, like, perfectly fine.
when I feel like you can do the research about the stories, especially from the sideline point of view, you can do the research about the stories behind the scenes as much as you want. But if you step out on a volleyball court and say, we're here at this game, people are going to be like, okay, she doesn't really know what she's talking about, because it's not a game, it's a match or a set. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the little things. It's the little things.
You can only fake it till you make it so far. And I think, kind of back to the women in sports thing, that's where so many girls and women have lost respect to an extent, even though some men do the same thing. But like you said, women are kind of under that microscope.
Right. No, I totally get that. I mean, it's definitely sort of two different sides to it, but at the same time, it's like everybody's in the same position. We're all trying to do the same thing. So
Right.
I want to know, as a reporter, coming up with stories, what's kind of your strategy with that? And also, when you're covering the same team for pretty much an entire season, how do you create stories that don't sound too redundant game after game? How do you try to keep things fresh and unique?
I'm definitely not the professional at this. I'm working on that. I think really you just start, I research a name everywhere. Like, for example, I'm going to throw a name out there, Ethan Long. He's a DH pitcher. I think he played some first base this year for ASU. I remember because at the beginning of the season, like I said, I didn't know ASU baseball. I never watched collegiate baseball. Sorry if I expose myself there a little bit, but like, it was never a part of, I guess, my forte. And so I literally just started by Googling names. You can find anyone just Googling names. And I've become a lot closer with a lot of the parents on the team, just being at so many ASU games, and just kind of, baseball is very much a just sit around, relax, and talk. So I'll sit there and just say, oh, hey, what's your relation to the team? And a lot of them had masks with numbers on them and that kind of thing. And just, you understand stories by being an observer, which I think is a strength of mine. I've always just been sit on the outside, figure out what's going on around me. I think you can learn a lot from that. That's the importance of staying or getting there early and staying really late, because you pick up on the stories no one else is going to pick up on, that you can't read on the internet. You can look at stats, height, weight, whatever you want, but just being in the atmosphere, talking to the parents, knowing where they came from, just the little stuff are going to come from somewhere. Like, I'm going to bring up the Chris Button College World Series stuff. She talked about the Mississippi State head coach being a neighbor with another head coach. And like, you don't know that unless you sit down and talk to someone. You have to do your research. You have to sit down and talk to them, set up the interview with them. It seems like a lot of extra work, but quite frankly, especially sideline reporting, you have very few shots on camera and you want to make those count. Social media is a big platform. Like, I don't think that's a secret at this point, but you can learn a lot from people from that. Just a lot of athletes, I look through their pictures, they're tagged, and I sound like such a stalker. Oh my gosh, the pictures they're tagged in or something like that. And you can learn a lot from that. A lot of the parents have Instagrams now. And so it's kind of fun to look through and like, oh, he played for that team. Oh, they played together growing up. and just putting it together like that. I don't know. I think I'm rambling at this point, but
No, I mean, those are all accurate points. Like I incorporate the same kind of things into my broadcast too, because just like the more you know, the better you sound. So
right.
just one of those things. I mean, being prepared is always good. It's always a good thing.
Unless you have to BS to an extent.
Yeah.
The better as always.
That's very true. That's very true. So you talked about what you've done. Now I want to know for you, what's the end goal? What's the ultimate dream that you're hoping to achieve in the sports media industry?
There are so many ways I could take this. Because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. Right now it's baseball. I really think I want to go into baseball. I talked to Taylor McGregor on my podcast. She does all the kind of sideline. I don't know if sideline is the right term in baseball, just because you kind of contribute to the podcast as a third reporter more than just a sideline reporter, if that makes any sense. But that's what I think I'm going to do as of right now, and just have a specific designated team. But also Laura Rutledge is a huge inspiration to me. I'd love to do that, kind of work my way up SEC football, covering some sideline football for ESPN, do a studio host show at some point, or like Chris Budden. She's like, I've thrown her name out several times this conversation, but she does baseball and then college basketball and then some college football too. And just the idea of always being on the road, I love that so much. Like, it would be so cool. End goal, if I ever get a studio job, I've always joked that like my second life, I'd be a fashion designer. So I think it'd be really cool to start my own clothing line of some sort, kind of like Aaron Andrews did, but more studio clothes focused. I don't know. There's so many ways you could take this career.
There really are, and you're still young, you still have plenty of time. So, but that's good. At least you have an idea of what you want to do. There's a lot of people that are our age, and they're still trying to figure out what they want to do, which is totally fine. But it's better if you know what you want to do. So it seems like you're definitely on the right track with that for sure.
I think at the end of the day, I would be very appreciative for any opportunity I get out of college, because everything's worth taking a chance, but it only takes one chance to really make your name known.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes just that one moment, that one place can like really change your whole life, to be honest with you.
Right.
So I want to go ahead and I want to end this interview. I want to ask you some rapid fire questions so we can kind of get to know you a little bit better. So are you ready? You ready to take this one? All right, let's do it. Okay. Favorite food?
Oh, shrimp.
Favorite sports movie?
Buffalo wings. One of those.
Shrimp or buffalo wings. I like that.
Yeah.
Favorite sports movie?
Remember the Titans.
First sporting event you ever attended?
Royals game.
Most memorable sports moment?
AFC Championship final minute at Arrowhead Stadium.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, invisibility. Is that
nice?
The right word for it? Okay, like a fly on the wall in any conversation like that. I feel like that's any reporter's dream. It's just like, could I sneak into the locker room and hear some stuff? Like
that actually would probably be the best one for being in the sports media industry. Yeah, you just go anywhere you want, press conferences, locker rooms. No one will see you. Favorite social media platform?
Oh, Twitter, because you can be kind of opinionated and kind of like quick jabs, but also it's good information.
Favorite sports broadcaster and favorite sideline reporter?
Oh, I can't. That's hard. Okay, I'm going to give a couple names. I'm sorry.
That's totally fine. Totally fine.
One of my favorites is Tom Harlan or Kevin Harlan. My goodness. Sorry. Haven't had coffee this morning, clearly. Kevin Harlan, he's from Kansas City, Kansas Salem. Something about his voice is just amazing. Ben Scully's the same way. His voice is just incredible. Like, it's kind of the sound of the voice that I remember hearing on the way home from Royals games as I was like halfway passed out, and just hearing the sound over the radio. Sideline reporters, and other reporters, Laura Rutledge, like I threw out there. I have a lot of respect for Erin Andrews. Just, she's been through a little bit more troubles and that kind of thing in her career that she's worked through and is handling it like an absolute champ and still does her job, does an incredible job. She's really well respected too. Chris Bunn's amazing. Oh my gosh, this isn't fair.
Too many to name. That's what we'll call it.
Right.
Okay, and a couple more for you. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Oh, 100% dogs.
Love that. I love that. Dream city to visit.
Ooh, visit or live?
Let's go both.
Dream city to visit. I'd like to live in Paris for an extended period of time. I've been a couple times, but I'd like to go back. I'd also like to visit Tokyo. A dream city to live in, probably New York City right now. That would be, once it opens up a little bit more, New York City. Ultimately, I'd love to live in Arizona after graduation because once you're used to the heat there, it's kind of hard to adjust to anything else.
Okay, Super Bowl or the Olympics?
Super Bowl.
Nice.
That's,
nice.
I might get some heat for that, but like,
hey, nothing wrong with that. Your team has been in it the past couple of years, so you have every right to say the Super Bowl.
It's a lot more excitement going into a singular event versus the Olympics are really cool in their own way. It's unity of the whole world and that kind of thing, and it would be awesome to get that opportunity, but it's just excitement over an extended period of time versus one game, I guess.
Totally. And lastly, what's one fun fact about you that a lot of people don't know?
Ooh. I'm trying to think. I'm a spokeswoman for the American Heart Association. I don't know.
Hey, that's very cool.
I'm really bad with fun facts.
That's a great fun fact. You're totally good. Okay, well, Olivia, I really appreciate you for coming onto the podcast today. You provided some very valuable insight for myself, and I know for my listeners as well. They'll really appreciate this. So just really thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I know you're definitely on your way. Just keep doing the great things you're doing. You definitely have the chance to inspire a lot of people. So just stay at it.
I mean, you as well. Just keep moving forward. I think we all need to be a little bit more supportive of each other as students. It's not easy, but just keep grinding and you'll get there.
For sure. Hard work never stops.
Trust the process. I'm going to quote JoJo there.
Love that.
All right, fellas, so that was a sports student interview with Olivia Eisenhauer. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It was an absolute pleasure having Olivia on the podcast. Big shout out to her once again for coming on. And that'll do it for today's episode. I will see you guys in my next one. All right, y'all. Take care. Sports student signing out. Peace.